Hello everyone, it's Becca from Becca Books and Bujo, and today we are talking about all of the books I read in the month of June. Let's just jump right in. I read 10 books in June. I DNF'd one book, and overall it was a pretty phenomenal reading month. So let's go through the stats. Sorry, I have my computer over here, so I'll be looking this away. So yeah, like I said, 10 books read, 1 DNF, and I read 3,443 pages. Out of the 10 books that I completed, 3 were contemporary, 1 was a historical, 1 was a mystery, 1 was a nonfiction, 3 were romance, and 1 was a thriller. As for the audience that these books were geared toward, all of them were for adults. All 10 were for adults. And then the format, 1 of them was strictly physical, 5 were audiobooks, and then 4 of them were a combination between audio and physical. And lastly, my average rating for the month was a 4.45. Just phenomenal. That is amazing. That's like probably the best reading month I've had. As for star ratings and average star ratings, it was just, yeah, really good. I guess I didn't factor the DNF into the average rating. I don't know if I'd give that like a 1 star and then that would lower it, but I'm not even going to count it in the average. We're just going to go through the books in order of reading them. And the first I read, I don't even have a physical copy with. I feel so lost without it. But this is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is the most perfect small town romance I could have ever wished for. We follow Alexis. She is on her way home from a family funeral, and she stops, or actually I think her car breaks down in a small town of Waukon, Iowa, which the only reason I know that is because Waukon was so close to the town that Willie and I used to live in, and Willie bought my engagement ring, wedding ring in Waukon, and I bought Willie's wedding ring in Waukon. So just as like when I first read that this book was in Waukon, I just like, my heart was so happy because it's a special place for me and my husband. Anyway, she gets stuck on Waukon and has a one-night stand with a gentleman who is much younger than her. And the next morning she sneaks out, goes back to Minneapolis, but she can't stop thinking about Daniel Grant. Daniel Grant is the mayor of Waukon and has this family history in Waukon, will never leave this place. He also runs a little bed and breakfast that is owned by his mother, but anyway, passed down through generations. And they just continue this relationship. Daniel is very set on being in this relationship, and Alexis is a little bit more hesitant because of her lifestyle. She's a doctor in Minneapolis and is held at a pretty high regard due to her parents. I mean, they are both doctors. She's a doctor. And Daniel, being from this small town and owning a bed and breakfast, she just didn't think that he would fit in with her life. But that ended up not mattering, and Daniel and Alexis are just the cutest. I loved this romance, 5 stars. I wanted to read that before I pick up Yours Truly, which I'm reading in July. Sneak peek there. But yeah, I just really, really loved it. I've loved Abby Jimenez so far. I've read 2 books by her, and I think loved them both. So can't wait to pick up Yours Truly in July. The next book I read was actually a reread. I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I decided to reread this when my book club wanted to pick it up. I read it at the end of last year. It was my favorite book of 2022, and someone in my book club decided to read it and discuss it, and so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna pick it up and read it again just so I can have it fresh in my mind. And it was perfect, as it was in 2022. In this one, we follow Sam and Sadie. They are best friends. They started their friendship on a hospital floor. Sam was in a very tragic accident and really hurt his foot, has issues with his foot throughout his entire life, and Sadie was on this floor because her sister had cancer. So they kind of bonded in the hospital game room. They played video games together and just became best friends from that point. They kind of had a couple of falling outs throughout their friendship, but ultimately gaming and their love of games and playing together kept them together. So they had a lot of hardships, a lot of ebbs and flows with their relationship, a lot of people coming and going in their lives, but ultimately they stuck together because of gaming. And it was it was good the second time, just as good as it was the first time. I loved it. 5 stars, if I didn't say it. Okay, next was a thriller, The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth. This was more of like a domestic thriller, which I don't know if it ever didn't say it was domestic thriller, but anyway, this is about twin sisters Rose and Fern. They're raised by a single mother. Fern is autistic and feels like she relies on Rose to take care of her. She needs Rose in her life in order to function, and Rose has kind of groomed her that way. Rose wants Fern to only be able to turn to her. And so when Fern finds someone and starts a relationship with that person, she realizes that Rose has this hold on her, and there's also this like weird thing that happened in the past that only Rose and Fern know about, but Fern saw it one way because Rose made her see it that way. And it was just yeah, kind of creepy trying to figure out what actually happened. And I definitely called the twist. I knew what was going to happen in the end, but it was still a fun ride. I think I gave it 4 stars and enjoyed Sally Hepworth's writing. I have read The Mother-in-Law. I think that was by Sally Hepworth, and I'm interested to see what else she has written and what else she comes out with. So I love a good thriller. It kept me engaged, and I cared about Fern really deeply. I feel like she was such a great character. You got into both Rose and Fern's brain, I believe. Yeah, it was from both perspectives. And it just made you like really consider who you are as a person and how you relate to other people. So yeah, really good. 4 stars. Enjoyed this thriller. Then another one I don't have a physical copy of is Love in Other Words by Allie Hazelwood. I loved this book so much. I think I'm starting to enjoy second chance romances, like high school flings that have gone away and then reunited crazily in the future. I don't know. I like that trope. Anyway, this is about Elliot and Macy. Macy lost her mother when she was very young. You find this out on like page 2. And so her and her dad have to do things on their own. They decide to get this summer house on a lake. Is it on a lake? No, I think it's in the mountains, maybe. Anyway, this summer cottage, and it is next door to a family that lives there full time, Elliot's family, and her and Elliot strike up this friendship mostly around books. They start just sitting in Macy's closet and reading books together, but it blossoms into this really beautiful friendship, and then into a little bit more than friendship. And this whole time we're going back and forth between the past and the present. Present is like 11 years later, so I think they're in their 30s, and their present, or their past, was, we get all the way from like 12 years old to 18 years old. But something happened to their friendship, to their relationship, and we don't know what happened. And there was all this miscommunication between Elliot and Macy because Elliot didn't truly know what happened until this big reveal at the end of the book, when we got the reveal. And so I don't know, it made me feel a lot at the end. Like this poor girl Macy goes through a lot. Elliot too, with not understanding what actually happened and what made their breakup happen so long ago, 10 years ago. So I just loved it. I don't know, nostalgia, it just makes me happy, and I love to see them back together in the end. So loved Love in Other Words, and that fulfilled my buzzword prompt for other for June, so that was great. Okay, then the next book I read was The Day the World Came to Town by Jim DeFeedy. This is the story of 9/11 in Gander, Newfoundland. I think I chatted quite a bit about this in one of my weekend reading vlogs, but ultimately this story comes down to the good in humanity and how people rally around and support people who are in hardship. So I never knew this story before 9/11. Obviously, you know about planes flying into the Twin Towers and into the Pentagon, but you didn't, at least I didn't. I was only 6 years old when 9/11 happened, so I didn't know, nor did I think about later on in life, about the other airplanes in the sky that needed to land and couldn't come into the US airspace because it was completely closed off. They said no airplanes can come into US airspace. So a lot of planes landed in Canada, And we got a lot of stories about people and airline workers and the people who lived in Gander. We got all of their stories about planes, I think like 36 planes landing in Gander, Newfoundland, which is a town of like 6,500 people. And then their town basically doubled in size for a week when the planes couldn't get out of Gander. So it just was amazing the way that people came to support all of these random people showing up in their small town. And just one quote, which I think everybody said on 9/11, is that we're all Americans today. And yeah, just the amount of support that people could give random strangers was just really, really heartwarming. Of course, there were sad moments. There were some people who landed in Gander that had firefighters fighting on 9/11 at the Twin Towers. And yeah, it was just heartbreaking and heartwarming all at once. But really, really loved this. And I'm thankful to my friend Karen for lending it to me. Then I did a whole dedicated vlog to this one, a reading vlog, where I read The Oceanography of the Moon by Glendy Vandera. This was a Once Upon a Book Club box that I received from my husband for Christmas, and finally read it and did a little reading vlog where I opened the gifts along with you. And I didn't realize it was going to be a love story, but it was a sweet love story about Riley and Vaughn, and they had this weird history that you had no clue about, and they didn't really have any clue about. But they came back together, and yeah, it was really sweet. It got a little slow, I think, toward like the 3/4 mark toward the end, but ultimately I enjoyed my time with it. I think the whole experience of opening the gifts made me want to read the book faster. The gifts weren't super great, but still super fun experience. I gave this one 4 stars. If you want to hear more about the actual story, go check out my reading blog. I'll link it up above. Then, oh, you know what? Then I think I DNF'd a book. I DNF'd The Postmistress by Sarah Blake. This was a book that I think my sister Naomi had on her shelves in high school and somehow just wound up on my shelves. I think that this is about a postmistress during 1940s, World War II, and she doesn't deliver a certain letter or some certain letters. And I don't know, I started listening to it, and it followed like 3 different storylines, and it was really hard. 3 different women who are all the same age and kind of in different spots of the world, but it was really hard to follow. And I was just, by the time I think I got to like 30%, 28% or something, and I just like didn't care. I was like, am I going to be sad if I don't read more about these characters? I can't even remember their names. And I was like, nope, I think I'm gonna put it down. I'm getting better at DNFing. I'm even in the process of DNFing another book right now in July already. But yeah, it just wasn't for me. And there's so many World War II stories out there that I feel like it needs to completely grab me right away from the beginning in order for me to actually give it the time. And this one didn't. So I just set it down, and I think I will be getting rid of it. Okay, then another World War II book, oddly enough, but this one was fun because there was a mystery element to it. This was Mr. Churchill's Secretary by Susan Elia McNeill. This is a Maggie Hope murder mystery, and this was fun. Maggie Hope grew up in the US with her aunt, I believe, her grandma, I think her aunt. She was orphaned and grew up in the US, but when her grandmother dies, so it must have been her aunt. When her grandmother dies in London, she needs to go deal with the house. That was like the one stipulation from her grandma, that she needed to come to London, spend the time there in order to sell the house or figure out what she wanted to do with this house. But while she was in London, she met some friends, fell in love with the house, and decided to stay. And so then we kind of start off right there when she is offered a job in Winston Churchill's house. What's that thing called? Number 10 Downing Street. Is that right? This is a large print. But she is offered a job as a secretary. And then there's like this random mystery that happens, and yeah, it was fun. I wasn't so much enjoying my time like for the first half, I would say that. But the end got crazy and super exciting, and so that's what bumped it up. I think it was going to be a 3-star, and it ended up being 3.5 stars. So I am going to continue with this series. I have one more book. Where is it? Here it is. I have Princess Elizabeth's Spy, which follows on with Maggie Hope. So I'm going to give it one more chance to see if I want to continue on with the series. This is like a 20-book series, I think. Maybe that's way too many. Maybe it's 10 books. But I have the second one, so I thought might as well give it a chance, because this one was so thrilling toward the end, and see if I want to continue on with the series. But ultimately just a fun mystery, a historical mystery, and I liked all of those aspects. So 3.5 stars for Mr. Churchill's Secretary. Okay, let's move on. I feel like I've been talking for ages. Okay, the next one, which I really, really enjoyed, was Romantic Comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld. This is a Minnesota author, Minneapolis, woohoo, hooray Curtis. But this is also just like so fun. We follow Sally Mills. She is a comedy writer for the Night Owls, which they call TNO, and it's basically SNL. It is Saturday Night Live, written by Curtis Sittenfeld. Anyway, she is a writer. One of the weeks, Noah Brewster comes on, and he's this famous singer. He is an older singer now, but he gained his fame back when he was 18 years old. So he's been doing this music scene for like 20 years. But he comes on as both the host and the musical guest on TNO. And Sally is like, oh, just another guy. But they end up striking up a relationship. They work on a scene together that Noah actually wrote, and Sally helps him, makes it better. And they strike up this friendship. They really get along that whole week, and then it seems like Noah is flirting with her, but she totally shuts him down, and that's just kind of how Sally is. She kind of ruins things for herself. So that was part one. All of Saturday Night Live, TNO, the Night Owls, all of that whole week of Sally and Noah together, rehearsing, parties, the actual show, super, super fun. I loved getting into the show. It was maybe a little bit too much of a deep dive into the show, but I still enjoyed it. And then the second part is like 2 years later. The first part was in 2018. The second part is 2 years later, 2020, pandemic hits. And Noah reaches out to Sally via email, and they strike up this email relationship. It's epistolary, you guys. I love epistolary novels. And this whole middle section is just emails back and forth between Sally and Noah, and I loved it. I just loved it. Anyway, they are super flirty over the emails, and they decide that they're going to see each other. Sally drives pretty much across the country to LA to visit Noah. And then we get to part 3, and they have their relationship. They struggle. Sally kind of ruins things for herself and for her relationship with Noah. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there. You'll have to figure out what happens in the end. Read it yourself. But I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I don't know why. I think maybe the reason I docked it a star was because of how much we got into TNO at the beginning, the Night Owls, the show, and it just like was a little bit overkill. Maybe. But loved the last 2 parts so much. So 4 stars for Romantic Comedy. Then I don't know if you're catching a theme here, but with the Postmistress, that was these books will self-destruct, and so was the Mr. Churchill's Secretary. So then I picked up another self-destruct book, which was Eleanor, Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. And this was an absolute win. This was 5 stars. We follow Eleanor Oliphant, and if you ask her, she would say she's completely fine. She doesn't need help from anyone. She is self-sufficient. She has her job. She takes care of things herself, and she likes it that way. But then she has computer issues, and she meets Raymond. Sorry, I just finished it, and I couldn't even remember his name. She meets Raymond, who helps fix her computer, and then they strike up this friendship. And as they are walking along the street, they see a man have a heart attack, and they help this man. He goes to the hospital. They end up visiting this man and continue the friendship with this older gentleman and Raymond and Eleanor. So it was just super sweet how Eleanor decided she could change some things in her life to be different, to not live this monotonous lifestyle that she is so used to, change things up, go and get a makeover, go and buy some new dresses, go out on a random Friday night, not get her normal salad for lunch. Just, I don't know. It was so fun to see her come out of her shell and realize that she could do things other than what she was so used to. She also had this very tragic and traumatic past that made her this way, that made her need to be regimented. And she was able to work through that with Raymond and a therapist and figure out how she could deal with that past and make her life so much better. So it was just, I mean, it was nothing like super exciting or thrilling, but the character of Eleanor Oliphant and her goofiness and quirkiness and loveliness was just great to read and great to spend time with. So loved this one. Then the last book I read in June was River, Sing Me Home. I gotta reach to pick it up, by Eleanor Shearer. This was beautiful. This was the first book I officially tabbed, y'all. Look at the tabs. Can you see them well? I don't know how to showcase them. Can you see? Anyway, I started reading this super late one night, and I started noticing like, oh, that's a really interesting portion about like hope. And here's an interesting portion about motherhood. And here's an interesting portion. And I was like, wait, this is what people do when they tab a book. I should go get some tabs. So I got tabs. I made some things I wanted to mention or to note, and I tabbed a book, and I'm really happy I did. I feel like that made my reading more intentional, made me pay attention a little bit more, I think, and just see those themes throughout. So let me tell you what this is about. This is about Rachel. She is a slave in Barbados. And the king, because Barbados is under England's rule, the king says slavery's done. But Rachel's owner is like, I'm still going to keep you for 6 years. And you're basically going to be my prisoners and work for me. And Rachel's like, nope, not going to happen. I want to be free. So she runs away, and she decides that on this journey of running away, she is going to find all of the children that she has been separated with because of slavery. She has like 7 children or something like that. Actually, I think there was 8, but 2 died in childbirth. And so she needed to find her 6 children. She knows that some of them probably ended up on the South Island, or the south of the island in Barbados. And so she starts there. And she, one way or another, finds her children. It was just like such a powerful story of motherhood and like what gets you through such terrible times. If you are a mother, it can be your children. They can get you through that. But I think that's also just like people can get you through such terrible times, and the hope of seeing them again and the persistence of keeping going. That makes no sense. But Rachel was a really strong character for what she went through and continued to go through in trying to find her children. You get little snippets of her past and like when she was first a mother to all of these children. And yeah, you meet some interesting characters along the way that help her on this journey. And so you saw this terrible side of humanity with the brutality of slavery, but then also the hope for humanity and people helping each other out. So I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I don't know why I didn't. Why didn't I give it 5? I think it was ultimately just like not fast-paced enough. When I first started reading this, I think I was vlogging, and I said I liked the like quickness of it. The pace of it toward the beginning was really thrilling because it kind of left on cliffhangers, because that was like the escape when she was first leaving the plantation and deciding that she was going to find all of her children. And it was kind of just like this mystery of who would she find, when would she find them, and who would she look for next. But then I think toward the end, it just kind of got like, okay, we found this child, now let's look for the next child, kind of just like repetitive. So I don't know, maybe that was it, but still a very, very good read, powerful read, a lot to say about the brutality of slavery and the hope for humanity. So Those were 2 of my tabs. Anyway, great book and a good one to end on. So here they are, 8 of the 10 that I read. The 2 I don't have here are Love in Other Words and Part of Your World. But yeah, a really, really great reading month. 4.45 average. Are you kidding me? That's phenomenal. I'm proud of myself for DNFing a book that I wasn't enjoying and picking up things that I really have an interest in. I think I'm hitting my stride, and I talked about this in my mid-year freakout tag. I think I'm just realizing what my reading taste is, not giving in to the hype of BookTube, and reading the things that I know I will actually enjoy. So that's what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were on them, if you agreed with me. If you didn't, it'd be great to have some bookish conversation with you down below in the comments. Like this video on your way out. Consider subscribing to my channel if you would like to see more bookish and bullet journaling content from me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!